Good evening, everyone. Chris Hansen here, and you are having a seat with Chris Hansen. I'm live tonight in New York City. Obviously, there have been some stress here with the coronavirus, COVID-19, being around town today. A lot of people taking precautions, some hot zones here and around the New York City area, as I'm sure there are where you are. Tonight, brand new show. Thanks for your patience last week. I was out of the country working on another big predator case for a television show that's coming up, and interviewing a number of the victims, survivors in that case. And quite honestly, it was just logistically difficult to get everything wrapped up in time to do this show. So I appreciate you hanging with me. And we're sort of tonight going to do two shows in one. We're going to update you on the Onision investigation out in Washington State. I can tell you that the Pierce County Sheriff's Department out there, which is the jurisdiction, the local jurisdiction where Onision and Kai live, has now reached out to a number of the victims that we've interviewed here on this program, a number of the survivors, and is scheduling interviews to get the information that the Sheriff's Department needs to go to the prosecutor's office. The state is also involved at this point, and the FBI continues to mine computer and cell phones in the investigation, specifically a computer and two cell phones that were turned over by Sarah, who, as you know, has appeared on this show and is a survivor of both Onision and Kai. A number of things, we are told, are digitally available there, and the FBI is doing what is known as a CART examination of the phones and the computer, and we should have information on that within the next week. So the investigation is proceeding. And one of the things that's interested me about all this as we've been digging into it is this collateral damage and how many more victims are actually out there, people who've come in contact with the YouTube Psycho Brat out in Washington State, people who have watched him, people who perhaps may not have actually gone to the house and lived there and had contact with Onision and Kai, but who have been affected. And we came across a woman named Holly Hayes, who has a site called onisionhurtspeople.tumblr.com, and over the last couple of years has amassed a database virtually of people who've been impacted by Onision. And Holly Hayes joins us right now. Holly, thanks for being with us on Have a Seat with Chris Hansen tonight. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being on tonight. I know we had scheduled it last week and things got complicated, but thanks for being here. How did you come up with this idea to put together onisionhurtspeople.tumblr.com?
Well, one of the things that the anti-Onision community is really, really good at is sort of creating a timeline, a really detailed timeline of exactly what he does, exactly when he does it, and it just they're very astute historians, of Onision and the things that he does.
What got you interested in this? And why did you put this together? What got you started here? What got your interest? What made you decide to put this together?
Well, what I was going to say is that the thing that I noticed that was missing in the community that I wanted to see more of was that I did not see a lot of his what I call casual victims. And when I say casual victims, I'm not talking about like Sarah and Shiloh and Billy and the girls that he abused like in his home. I'm talking about teenage girls who watched his videos and started starving themselves. I'm talking about anyone who's familiar with Onision's history will remember the little boy who wrote to Onision saying, "My mom's abusing me, what do I do?" And his response was, "Well, you have legs, don't you? Get up and walk away." Or there was another girl who he used to make these rate my body videos where he would tell people if they were too fat or too skinny. And one girl, he told her he looked like Shrek. And this happened to be a girl who had just recovered from an eating disorder. And she started cutting herself. She started starving herself, and we never heard from her again. So it made me wonder what is happening to all those people that he's affecting so badly. And I wanted to create a blog and a place where people could feel safe telling their stories.
How did you first become aware of Onision yourself, Holly?
So I'm Canadian. Shiloh is also Canadian. I had heard of her. She was kind of sort of an up-and-coming pop star in my country at the time. So I log on YouTube one day in like 2011 or something, and I see a picture. It's a thumbnail of Shiloh and some guy standing beside her. And I was excited because like I almost never see Canadians on the internet. So I was like, wow, it's Shiloh, a Canadian on the internet. And then I looked at the guy next to her, and I almost swore. I kid you not, every hair on my body stood up on end. I just immediately got vibes of like there's something so wrong with this person. And ever since then, I've been following his career. It's like when someone has a fever and you put your hand up to the forehead and you could feel the heat coming off them. It was like that, but darkness. Like I could feel the darkness coming off of him. And I know that sounds so like new age crap, but like that's really what it felt like.
And what was it about him that set off this radar, Holly? If you had to put your finger on it, what would you say it was?
I would say it was 3 things. One was that I could tell he was just completely hollow as a human being. Like there was just nothing inside of him. Whatever the vital component it is that makes a human being, he just doesn't have it. The second thing is that he's extremely manipulative. And the third thing is that he's obsessed with violence. I don't know how else to put it. He's just completely obsessed with violence. It's the only thing he thinks about other than sex and violence.
How many young women have reached out to you in this site, this central collecting house of
hundreds? I've had hundreds of submissions, hundreds.
And give me a sense of some of the things young women have told you on this, Holly.
Oh no, I should have pulled up actually.
Well, that's all right. Just give me a sense of it. You've obviously gone through it.
It's okay. I actually put a tag on them all just in case I had to do this and forgot, so I can read the worst ones.
Did you ever think?
I'll read the shorter ones.
Yeah, give me a sense of some of the young women who have checked in and what they say about the reaction to experiencing Onision online.
Okay, here's the thing. Okay, the worst one, in my opinion, on here is relatively long, so I don't know if you want me to read it.
Well, give me a sense of it. Read part of it for me, and let me know what this young woman said.
I haven't read this in a while, but essentially, from what I recall, what happened was a teenage girl discovered that her 12-year-old sister was DMing Onision. And at first, of course, she was like, wow, Onision, cool, you're DMing him. And then she started reading their messages. And it was questions like, does your dad abuse you? Have you ever been raped? Stuff like that. And hold on, I'm trying to remember the.
What does it say about?
He started his infamous 14 is the legal age of Japan line in that that's how I knew it was Onision.
What do you think you've proven with this in the hundreds of girls who have come forward, Holly? What do you think it says about Onision and what he's been doing?
I would say the problem goes very, very far beyond Sarah, Shiloh, Isla, Billy, Regina, Sky, Alicia. This is a man who literally cannot stop himself from hurting women. He cannot stop. The only way for him to stop is for us to stop him. He will do this until the day he dies. And there's always going to be girls who are naive. There's always going to be girls who are just don't know any better, aren't educated, are too damaged, and are like willing to go along with it.
What does it say? What does this say about the YouTube culture, Holly? The fact that he's able to do this, the fact that it's had this impact on so many young women, hundreds, at least in your case, of women who have come forward to OnisionHurtsPeople.tumblr.com.
What does it say about YouTube?
I mean, virtually anybody can go on it, right? And say basically what they want. It's unregulated. We know that. That's the nature of it. But over and over and over again, there have been allegations against Onision of targeting young women online, and yet nobody seems to want to take responsibility for it at YouTube. What does that say to you?
I think overall, okay, granted, I don't know a whole lot about this, so take this with a grain of salt. But overall, I would say YouTube is doing a pretty good job at cracking down on predatory behavior on YouTube. But what absolutely blanking baffles me is that Onision is still on this platform and he's using it to hit on 14-year-old girls. Like, what is wrong with you, YouTube? Like, the only thing I can think of, the only reason I can think of that they would continue doing this is that they're waiting for like an Austin Jones type situation where maybe law enforcement has told them to leave it up until, so that they can like have all the evidence until they arrest him. That's the only thing I can think of. Everything else to me is just absolutely reprehensible.
And of these hundreds of young women who have reported to you on this, OnisionHurtsPeople.tumblr.com,
Mm-hmm.
what does it say that so many young women have come forward with such a wide range of impact that they've suffered because of Onision?
Kind of an interesting question, that actually. I was hoping you were going to ask that, because one of the things I noticed is that there's like an astounding number of patterns of abuse of people who have nothing to do with Onision whatsoever. And yet all the patterns of abuse are exactly the same. I've had people tell me that their partners reminded me of Onision. I've had multiple people tell me that their partners would force them to watch Onision. I had a girl tell me that a female friend of hers would force her to watch Onision in order to make her feel bad for eating and then use it to make her throw up after. Just an unbelievable number of victims who are like, oh my God, he reminds me exactly of my ex.
Did you ever think when you started this that you'd have so much response, so many young women are reacting to this?
Honestly, yeah, I did. That's why I started it. I knew I was going to get as many responses as I got.
And do you still get responses today as we speak?
I've got responses today. I still get responses. Every single day I get responses.
And give me a sense of the range of people checking in here in terms of what they're saying, what impact that Onision had on their lives.
On the milder side, I guess I would say people just having like a sort of a messed up worldview. On the more severe side, I have literally had people starve themselves to death because of Onision and his rhetoric on YouTube.
Now, when you say starve yourself to death, people didn't actually die.
No, they died.
You have cases where somebody died in relation to starvation.
Yep.
Tell me about that case.
So the sister of the girl who died came onto Tumblr to announce her death because she was like fairly popular in like, I guess, the eating disorder community. So her sister logged on to say that she had passed away, and a lot of the things she reblogged were Onision related, and also this is an important thing to mention too. Also Kai related as well, because Kai also is into Thinspiration.
Thinspiration.
Thinspiration stands for, it's a portmanteau that stands for thin and inspiration. So you, for example, you look at a picture of a really, really thin woman and you'd use it as Thinspiration.
So you would say that Onision's impact continues today in this entire career he's had on YouTube has still been something that impacts young women in a very negative way.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I see it all the time. If you look at his most recent YouTube videos, you can, if you, I mean, the comments are obviously heavily edited, but you can see like comment after comment after comment after comment of teenage girls being like, "Oh my God, Daddy, I love you," you know, and just like gross shit, like gross crap. And it's like you're 14, he's 35. Like, why? I don't understand.
He's made arguably a lot of money through YouTube and his various other endeavors. Some of the Twitch has cracked down on him. Some of the other areas have cracked down. The other streaming platforms, but YouTube continues to allow him to be up. Is that appropriate in your opinion, based upon what you've seen?
When it comes to Onision, 100% unequivocally no. Because Onision uses his platform to victimize people. I don't understand in what world that's okay. Like, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe someone swore on a Chris Hansen live stream one time by accident. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe there's been other, you know, issues on Twitch where people did things inappropriate that were like kind of borderline crossing the line. But this is totally different. I mean, this is like, I mean, that whole Eugenia Cooney thing that he's like that hate campaign against Eugenia Cooney, he started that whole thing.
And what is it? That was something that was very, very damaging to Eugenia Cooney.
Oh yeah, she got hate for like what, a year, 6 months to a year, and she didn't get better either. She got worse.
Have you ever been contacted by law enforcement about any of this, Holly?
I have not. I'm open to it though, if it's possible.
And you plan on continuing this?
Oh, 100%. I won't stop until he stops. I've been doing this since 2011, and like, this is like an. It's kind of pathetic to admit this, but this is like an honest to God hobby of mine at this point. Like that man needs to go down. Like he cannot be allowed to hurt any more women.
What do you think should happen to Onision?
I think he should rot in hell. Sorry. I mean, I know you said not to swear, but I think he should go to, honestly, giving my non-flippant answer, I think he should go to prison for the rest of his life. And I think his wife should too.
You think what he's done is that bad?
I mean, I'm not very familiar with the ins and outs of the system, but I mean, yeah, I guess I would say in a morally just world, he would get exactly what he's given to others.
And he's been at this for a decade now.
Oh yeah, since like 2008 at least.
All right, Holly Hayes, listen, thanks for being on the program tonight. I appreciate it. We'll stay in touch with you about your effort with Onision hurtspeople.tumblr.com. Thanks for weighing in, and thanks for being a part of our show. We appreciate it very much. You have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, Holly. So here's another interesting thing that has come up because of the Onision investigation. A lot of people have come forward to me through email and a lot of the other social media platforms to say that they've been emboldened to come forward and tell their stories about other cases, about other alleged predators. And one of the cases that I've gotten just a ton of reports on is a fellow by the name of Davi Vanity, who is the frontman for a group called Blood on the Dance Floor. And over and over and over again, I've been approached on Twitter and other social media to take a look at this. And so tonight we have a young woman who has reached out, inspired in part by the Onision story and our investigation of Onision, Greg James Jackson, to tell her story about her experience with Davi Vanity. And Ashley Lillie joins us right now from down in Florida. Ashley, thanks for being with us tonight.
Of course. Hey.
So we'll get to how you met Davi Vanity and what happened in just a minute. But what was it about the Onision investigation that encouraged you to reach out and want to tell your story in terms of what happened with Davi Vanity?
Everything. I was watching it from the moment you interviewed Shiloh, and watching her story go back so far, I think honestly a lot of the years had to do with it, because I don't know if you saw earlier on Twitter, some people were saying the case is dated, so who cares about it anymore. But seeing people like Shiloh and Sarah and everybody who went through a bunch of trauma with him years ago coming out now really made me realize, like, it's not too late. And especially with somebody like him who still for some reason has a minor platform, he shouldn't be able to still get away with it, because the mentality of it's old news is very, it enables people to keep on going. So I really wanted to, get it before it's too late.
Well, it's interesting because when we first started this particular YouTube channel, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen, it was geared towards talking about Onision. And our first guest was Blair White, and she really kind of laid this out, and immediately almost, not knowing how big this would get or how much attention it would get, or that it would, help with an FBI investigation and a Pierce County Sheriff's Department investigation. People were talking about Davi Vanity. How did you first even know Davi Vanity existed and was in this group? On the dance floor.
How I found out he was in the band?
Yeah, I mean, how did you find out that he even existed?
Well, it's funny, I had no idea who he was. And then the day before, I was going to go see the Medic Droid. There's a big throwback for anybody watching. It was in 2008 in December, and I was going to go see the Medic Droid perform at the Social in Orlando. And I was on MySpace the day before, and somebody posted a bulletin with like a really vulgar name on the bulletin, and 13-year-old me was like, let me click on that and see what that is.
So
and,
you were 13 at the time.
I was 13.
The concert came to town, and how did you get to the concert? How did you get involved in this?
My mom took me and my friend because we both wanted to see that band, and I had seen Blood on the Dance Floor the day before on that MySpace bulletin, and I was like, wow, this music is really bad, but he looked really cool. So I was, because when I was that young, I was like, whoa, he looks cool. Like nobody cares, or he doesn't care what anybody thinks about the way he looks. So I was attracted to that. So I went to the show, and he was running his own merch booth. And I just went right up to him and was just like, hey, I like your band. I mean, just to like have conversation with somebody, of like, I guess he's not a celebrity, but he was like celebrity status to me at the time. Well,
he was performing a concert. He was in a band. Yeah. You were 13. He had a merch stand. You approached. What was the conversation like?
It was really loud and really bold really quickly, and I was really shy when I was that age. So I went up to him and I was like, hey, like, I like your band. Like, it's so cool that you're here doing this. And he was like, I love you, like really loud. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, I love you too. Like, and
he said, I love you.
Yeah.
Right.
Like very boldly. Yeah, he didn't even know my name. Like, I guess he was just trying to be nice to fans, but I was like, okay, I love you too. And we just like talked a little bit. I got a shirt and I went out to the crowd.
And that was it. You watched the show. Explain to me, I've seen some videos of him, but what was the attraction to this particular band, Blood on the Dance Floor?
Like I said, I had never heard of them until the day before, but I think at the time it was because the whole like scene style was popular with like the big teased hair and the makeup and everything. And there was like, I mean, everybody in the crowd looked like the same style. So I think the people that were there for him were really there for that. And I think it also made a lot of people, because when you're so young, you want to feel so grown up so quick. And I feel like the content of the lyrics being as vulgar as they are made a lot of teenagers be like, oh, if I listen to this, like I sound like an adult, repeating these lyrics. And I think they felt relatable, which is really gross because he was 30 almost at the time. So it's really, I think it was just everybody wanted to feel more grown than they were.
These bands do appeal to that age group. I can remember years ago taking my oldest son, then 13 or 14, with 3 of his buddies to a concert. I didn't know much about what was going on. I think one of the Ramones was playing, and I knew that. So how bad could it be? But the bands leading up to that in a club in Hartford, Connecticut, were kind of rough.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was getting into, and it was different. They're all boys, and so we saw, and at some point it became late, and we got out of there. But I can understand how a parent would end up taking their kid to this. So, at what point did you hear from or get connected to Davi Vanity again after that first concert?
Well, my mom actually during the concert was just walking around, just avoiding the pit at all costs. And she ran into his band manager, who at the time was Rebecca. I don't think she's associated with him anymore. I honestly haven't looked into it to find out. But so she ran into Rebecca and was pretty much like, hey, how can my daughter and her friend like hang out with the bands, like trying to, play cool mom and get us to meet people. And Rebecca was like, well, we're all just kind of hanging out, and like I don't know if they can meet the Medic Droid or the other bands performing, but Davi does hair. And my mom was like, oh, well, she really wants to get her hair cut, like, the scene choppy haircut. So Rebecca put my mom into connection with him, and then he actually added me on MySpace, and he messaged me just a few days later.
And give me a sense for how this messaging progressed.
It really just started as like, it's been 10 years, so I really can't remember the exacts, but it started basically just like, hey, this is the girl from the show. And, you know, he's like, oh, hey, like, oh my God, I'm so glad that we're talking, like just basic conversation. And at first it was really just like, well, what's a good day for you? And I remember being so bummed out because that was like late December of 2008, I believe. And then it got to like January or February of 2009. And I was like, really bummed out because I hadn't really heard anything back from him. And then he finally messaged me like, okay, well, this day is good for me, which I think must have been like February or March of 2009. And then we pretty much just agreed on a date. I okayed it with my mom and we set it up for him to come on that day.
So he came over essentially as a hairdresser who also happened to be in a band, and
yeah.
And the idea was he was going to cut your hair.
Yes.
So he gets there. Is he a bit of a celebrity to you, to your mom?
I mean, yeah, to us at the time, because we didn't really know any better. And at the time, he was wildly popular among, like, you know, the alternative scene. And this was really before anything started ever coming out about him. So there was really no negative press on him. Like, there was nothing to go by. Like, I think this was probably a year before anything bad started coming out about him. So we were all very welcoming. He came in with like his giant haircutting kit and he seemed legit. So we just started the process. My mom made him drinks, but not us, because my friend was with me as well. I don't know if I mentioned that, but my friend was staying the night with me, and then she was also going to get her hair cut. I don't remember if she ended up getting it cut or not, but so she made him drinks and whatnot, but then he started sneaking us the drinks, and we ended up getting a little bit buzzed as, you know, teenagers, or preteens even, barely teenagers.
And did your mom have any idea this was going on in the house?
Yes and no. She figured that we would probably like sneak a sip, but you know, this is going to sound bad. And like, I don't want anybody to come for my mom in the comments or anything, or try to question her parenting, because, you know, she did what she could, but, she just, you know, I mean, she let us have like a couple sips of drinks every now and again, but she didn't know that we were like drinking. Because that happened in my room, like away from view. Because they were primarily, when it was Davi and my mom talking, they were in the kitchen and the dining room the whole time. And then we were like in my room, and we'd go and like sip our drink and go back out there.
So how did this progress this evening? He cut your hair, and then what happened?
So he cut my hair, and I think he might have trimmed my mom and my friend's hair. But then we just kind of turned into just hanging out and just like, I couldn't tell you what we talked about as far as like not as appropriate stuff, but the inappropriate stuff that came later, of course I remember. But it was just like a bunch of chatting and like, oh cool, you're in a band. What's that like? What's touring like? What's being famous on MySpace like? You know, things like that. And then as the night progressed, my mom ended up going to bed, and the intention was for him to stay the night but to sleep on the couch, because he drove about an hour to get to us, and he had drinks, and my mom didn't want him to drive, so he was going to sleep on the couch. But
where did you end up alone with him along with your friend?
Yes, it was. She said she didn't care, you know, if we like stayed up to keep talking, because obviously we're just like, oh my God, like so starstruck to be talking to this person, and she thought it was innocent at the time, because he told. Also important to note is that he told us he was 23 when this happened. Like, he came over in February, March of 2009 and said he was 23.
And how old was he? How old was he really?
He was over 25, between 25 and 28 at the time.
And did anybody think it was inappropriate to have this guy at 25, 28 years old in a home with a couple 13-year-old girls, even though there was a parent there?
I think that my mom was just, we've never had like a great relationship. So I think she was just trying to do something cool, you know, for me and my friend. And, I didn't say anything otherwise when things started going bad, because at the time I thought it was normal and I thought that I would get in trouble. So I didn't really, you know, ever let her know that anything inappropriate happened.
What inappropriate did happen between you and
that night after my mom went to bed and, you know, she okayed us to hang out a little bit longer. He said he was going to go to bed, but he ended up coming back into my room.
So he came into your bedroom?
Yes, but me and my friend were still awake. So we were just hanging out, talking, whatever. And we were happy because we're like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, let's keep talking. Like, this is awesome. And again, I was 13, so I was starting to question my sexuality. And I actually had a crush on my friend that was over. And he was like, teasing us about it, and he was like, well, do you think you're bi? Do you think you like women? And mind you, we're not women, we're young girls.
Right.
And we were like, nervous because we're young. So we're just like, yeah, I guess, like, yeah, we like each other. And then he was like, well, you guys should kiss. And
he wanted you to kiss your friend.
Yeah. He wanted me and my friend to kiss. Yeah, she was 14.
So you're 13, she's 14. And did that seem odd to you that this older fellow was asking you to do this?
Yeah. It seemed odd, but it also kind of comes with, like I said earlier, when you're younger, you want to feel so much older than you are. So I was like, this is cool. This is a cool thing. But I was also uncomfortable. Like, I've always had this like sense of when something is dangerous or uncomfortable in the back of my mind, and kind of end up dealing with it later. But even at that time, I was like, this is kind of weird. But we ended up kissing in front of him, and it was like really quick. It wasn't anything major because we were both so embarrassed and like felt awkward about it. And then he tried to join in on it, and he, came closer to us. And I believe that there was an actual like contact between a three-way kiss.
So this goes on, and does the night end there, or what happens?
No. So basically we're getting ready to go to bed, and I genuinely can't remember if he left and then came back, or if he just stayed in there with us when we went to lay down. It's all things like that are just still kind of fuzzy, and I remember something new every time because I've repressed a lot of this. But basically he ended up laying in the middle of us. So it's like him and then me and my friend. And I remember my friend started like going to sleep, and he rolled over to face me, and we were just talking a little bit, but then he started to kiss me again. And I have never done anything like that before. I had kissed like one boyfriend, and it was like, I was a kid. We didn't kiss. It was just like, a peck. And he was like kissing me, like full on, like, and I remember pulling back, and then he pulled me back in to kiss him. And then he pulled my hand down. And when my hand reached where he wanted, it was on his genitals that he had already pulled out of his pants. And I quickly just like shrunk my hand back, and I was like, no, like I've never done that before. I don't want to do that right now. And he seemed kind of irritated, and he was like, no, like, come on. And then he put my hand down there again. And the same thing, I just pulled it right back because I've never felt it before. So I was like grossed out. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like,
and he knew you were 13.
Yeah, he knew very well.
Did you ever tell your mom about this at the time afterwards?
No.
Why not?
She still doesn't know. And so this is going to be a great conversation to have with her.
Why didn't you go to your mom about this? I mean, it had to be shocking to you at the age of 13.
It was, but me and my mom when she remarried, we started having a really bad relationship, and we kind of lost the ability to talk to each other about most things. So I felt like she was going to be mad at me, or she was going to be mad at him. And this is somebody that in my naive mind, I thought was my friend, because of course I'm going to think it's my friend. You're over, we're hanging out, we're talking, we're getting to know each other. Like, I didn't know any better. So I always was afraid of hurting him and of hurting my mom's feelings, because I thought she would be more mad at me for performing any acts rather than him for
You were afraid to come forward and tell your mom.
Yeah.
And what did he say when you said, no, I don't want to do that?
He got really irritated, and he rolled to face the other way, and I'm sitting there like frozen, still facing him. And I'm like sitting there in my mind, like, oh my God, like, what did I do? Like, I did something wrong. I'm so sorry. And I even said it. I was like, I'm sorry, like really quietly, but he just ignored me. And I heard him talking to my friend, but I asked her the next day, and she said that he never tried to do it with her either, or with her too.
So what happened for the rest of the night? Everybody went to sleep. He left.
Yeah, he ended up leaving the room at some point, went and slept on the couch. The next morning, everything was fine, and we said our goodbyes, and everything seemed normal. So I was like, okay, cool. He's not mad at me, because the whole time, like, I had never been in that position before with anybody. So I thought that I did something wrong, because this person who came all the way to see me, all the way to hang out with me, who is giving me free merch, who's giving me a haircut, and who's hanging out, like spending time with me, they're mad at me now. Like, I was so afraid of upsetting him. And I'd seen, him online yelling at girls and like sending, his fan base after people. So I was really like, at a loss. Like, I just didn't know what to do.
Did you reach out to him again, or did he reach out to you after this first?
I genuinely don't remember which one of us reached out to the other, but I think I really want to say that he reached out to me, and because I remember being relieved when he messaged me, whether it was messaging me back or initially messaging me, I don't remember, but I remember when he actually messaged me back, I was like, whew, like I was so excited that he wasn't mad at me.
You were afraid at that age, in your mindset at that age, you were afraid that you did something to upset him.
Yeah.
And this person he was a musician. He was in a band. He was a celebrity.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
And that meant a lot to you.
Yeah, because I at the time I would have hated to be known as the girl who upset him, and here I am, I guess.
And so, how did you come to meet him again?
It was through I've always been like, if I feel like I've upset somebody, I want to talk it out with them. I want to know what happened. Like, even when I was younger, given I'm much more composed with it now, but back then it's just like, I'm so sorry. Like, what did I do? I didn't ever say I'm sorry to him, but I was just like, hey, like thinking about you, like, hope you're okay, you know? And I believe that he had a show in between the time that happened and I saw him next, because he would get us into shows every time he played. I know I'd seen them play at least 5 to 7 times throughout that year. So we basically just ended up being like, oh, let's hang out again. And we just were trying to search for things to do. And in hindsight, very weird that he would even want to just hang out with me. But we ended up deciding, I'm sorry?
Did you think it was weird that this guy wanted to hang out with a 13-year-old girl?
I didn't think it was weird. I thought it was cool.
And so what did you guys do the next time you hung out?
We saw a movie, and I've been able to keep track of the dates of this based off of the movies that we saw. So we saw Angels and Demons in May of 2009, and we saw it in theaters. And when we were approaching the theater, it's actually weird. We ran into a friend of mine from school, and she like didn't know what band he was in, but she recognized him just from my post, because we had so many pictures on MySpace together at the time. And she recognized him but didn't know what he was from, and he was like getting kind of irritated because like he had to tell her what band he was in to, you know, break the recognition.
And you saw the movie. How did his behavior go during the movie? Was he trying to be close to you? Was he suggestive in any way?
Not suggestive, but he like was like cuddling, like put his arm around me, you know, like pulled me close to like snuggle while we watched the movie. And in my mind, because I was, you know, conditioned to believe that this person was, you know, like so cool and like this person that I needed to respect, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm good. Like, we're good. Like, I just kept reminding myself, like, this means he's not mad at me, basically.
And what happened after the movie? What did you guys do?
We left the movie and he told me, so basically there's an Outback restaurant in the parking lot of the movie theater, and he told me like, hey, my friends are at Outback, like, do you want to go meet them and hang out with them? And I was like, hell yeah. So I don't know if that counts as cursing, I'm sorry, but I was like, yeah, like, of course I do. Like, I want to hang out with your cool like band friends and like these older people than me. And he went sorry.
That's all right. I'm sure it's, you know, bringing back these memories is difficult. So you're in the car. He says, we'll go to the restaurant. My pals are there. You can meet them. You thought that was cool. Does he take you to the restaurant, or where does he actually take you? No.
He parked in the very back, like by the dumpsters, and there was no lighting or anything. And he parked, and I was like, are we gonna go meet your friends? Like, this is really far parking, but the restaurant was usually packed, so naive me was just like, oh, we're parking far away because the restaurant's crowded. And he was like, I had a really good time tonight, like, you know, just talking to me like that. I don't remember the specifics. And he put his arm around me and like pulled me in to like start kissing me. And I was okay with it because I just thought it was more redemption, I guess, for upsetting him in the first place. And naive me at the time was like, if he's doing it a second time, then maybe he's into me. Even as weird as that is, looking back, that's such a strange thought process to have, but you know, that's how I was thinking about it at the time. And he started like pushing on the back of my head and like pushing me down. And I'm sorry.
No, it's. I understand it's painful and emotional. You had never had an experience like this with a boy or man?
No, I'd never done anything more than kiss somebody before. And so he's pushing down on my head, and I'm like, I pulled back up like as much as I could, but you know, he's much bigger than me, and he like has his hand on the back of my head, and he keeps pushing me down. And I was like, dude, like I don't want to do this. Like I've never done this before. And he was like, no, it's okay, and just like kept pushing down. And it was to the point where like I literally, like, my cheek was like smushed against his pants, and he was like trying to pull it out, and I like somehow like whipped back, and I was like, dude, I don't want my first time to be forced, like that's not cool. And it was like night and day. Like he got angry at me.
Was he trying to force you to perform oral sex on him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you pushed away, not having any experience doing anything like this.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when he was trying to get you to do this?
I was confused because, like I said, I'd never done it before. And I was like, does this mean that he likes me? Like, should I do this because he likes me? Like, it was one of those things. And whenever I pulled back, as soon as I said I don't want to be forced, he like latched onto those words and got angry at me, and he just like whipped back up on the seat, like pulled his pants back up, and like just started driving. And he was driving so erratically all down like the main road all the way back to my house, and was like, I can't believe you would say that I would force you to do something. I would never force you to do anything. I would never want to make you uncomfortable or force you to do that. And he just kept saying it. And I was like, but you did. And when I said that, he just got even more mad. And then he went silent. And like the really crappy part about this next thing is like, I promised my friend that he would call her while we were hanging out, because she really wanted to like talk to him because she was a fan. So she calls me as we're arguing, and like as it's like tense, and I am like crying on the phone, and I'm like, I'm sorry, he can't talk right now, like something happened, like I have to talk to you later, I'm sorry, maybe tomorrow.
And how did this evening wrap up? I mean, what did you say to him? What did he say to you? How did it end?
It was a pretty quiet drive after I got off the phone with my friend. And then when he was pulling back onto my street to drop me off, he pulled over to this area that was like at the time wooded still before they started building up on it. And he pulled over, and I was like, why are you stopping here? But then I thought maybe he just wanted to apologize to me and handle it before we got back to my house. So if we're sitting in the car, my mom's not questioning, why are you sitting in the car? Why aren't you coming out? You know? So he pulled over, and he looked at me, and he was like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gotten so mad at you. Like, that was a bad reaction. And then he put his arm around me and was like, come here, to like hug me, because I was like tearing up at this point. I was like, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to upset you. I just was scared. I've never done that before. And he did the same thing. Where
again,
yeah,
he tried to force you into a sex act.
Yeah, again. And when he had his arm around me again, he just started pushing again. And at that point, like, I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, do the same thing. Just say, no, you don't want to do it. But I was just like, he's doing it again. Like, I'll just do it.
So he forced you to perform sex on him?
Yeah.
Oral sex?
Yeah.
I just can't imagine what that was like for a 13-year-old girl.
Very confusing.
To be
very confusing. It's confusing with anybody, I'm sure, but my confusion was having to take out, given I didn't idolize him, but it's like removing the idol from the person. And I couldn't do that when I was younger. And I was like, well, it's okay because this, and this. Like, it wasn't okay. It was never okay. But at the time, like, I was trying so hard to justify it because I honestly couldn't believe that it was happening to me. So it's like the denial, just constant denial. Like, this isn't happening.
And you when the night wrapped up, he took you home?
Yeah, we were right down the street from my house, and he took me back to my house, and he slept on the couch.
And you didn't tell your mother, obviously.
No.
Do you wish, looking back, that your mother had intervened here? I mean, is there a cautionary tale for other young women out there who might be starstruck by somebody who's a celebrity or musician or Something like Onision, for instance?
I would have been so mad at her at the time, but now that all these stories have come out, it literally took less than a year before all these stories from other people started coming out. So if I just waited and I just like let my mom, you know, not let her, she obviously didn't try to come in, but like if she had, it would have made such a big difference. I would have been mad at her for a couple of months, then been like, whoa, that saved a lot. But,
and did you see him ever again after this, after he left the next morning?
Yeah. It was, like I said, it was a bunch of denial, and it was me not wanting to admit to myself that this was wrong, even though I knew it was wrong. So he would, you know, hit me and my mom up about local shows whenever he was playing in Orlando, and we would go and he would get us in, and, you know, he'd give me free merch and everything. So it was just a bunch of like promises and like staying friendly to each other that like kept me like, this is okay, because how can somebody who wants to hurt me be nice to me? You know?
What did you represent to him, looking back now in your early 20s?
What did I mean to him?
What did you mean to him?
Nothing. I was nothing. I was just another girl who could fall for his, you know, BS. And I know that.
What impact, looking back, did this have on you? I mean, obviously this is not the way you want to first be introduced into being intimate with a man.
No. Well, back then I honestly didn't recognize that it was truly wrong until probably 2 years later, when I was a little bit older. Well, actually, when I was 15 is about when the Jesse Slaughter thing happened. And right. I saw everybody saying things to him. I might have been 14. I really don't remember what time that happened. But I remember that all came out, and I actually called him, and I was like, yo, what is this? Like, what's going on? Why are people saying these bad things about you? And even though I knew bad things that he'd done to me, I still denial, you know? But I called him, and he was like, no, it's all BS. Like, that's not true. Everything that she's saying is a lie. And given I still don't really know what she said, because I never have watched the full video. I've only ever seen, like, you know, the bits and pieces that people have turned into joking videos on the internet, which is just sad. But so I just took his word for it. But I always had such an unsettling feeling about it. And after I really had to sit there and realize, like, you're fighting with a 10-year-old. I think she was 10, but he now, not to disregard his current pronouns,
right.
But at the time, I'm like, you're fighting with a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, 12-year-old, however old she is, and you are in your 20s. Like, what? It really just kind of snapped in me, and I was like, that's not right. And we just kind of slowly stopped talking. Like, he ended up changing numbers, and we just never talked again. MySpace died out, so we didn't have any contact. But basically, back then, the question was, how did it affect me long term, right?
Yeah. I mean, how does this impact you today, all these years later?
After I really sat and realized what happened to me when I was like I said, I was like 15, 16, probably, whenever I really sat down and I was like, this is what happened to me, and this is really effed up. Like, this is not cool. I really have a hard time. Is it okay to get like slightly graphic in a sexual manner? Like,
I think it's fair if that's the impact this incident and this person had on you. Yes.
I still to this day have a really hard time, not necessarily like performing oral sex, but like if a hand goes on the back of my head, it really depends. Like, there's even my fiance of 6 years, every now and again I'm like, stop, like I can't do that. Like, it really,
so it brings back this reaction, this memory of being assaulted.
It just brings back this feeling that just instantly has me like, you know, like, it feels like the breath got knocked out of me, and I feel really claustrophobic, and I can't control it, and I wish I could, because I hate when that happens so much.
Did you ever confront him in any of these messages back and forth on social media platforms to say, hey, this wasn't cool, this was bad?
No.
Did he ever make a song about you?
No, thankfully. I honestly, if he did, I think I would have laughed at that. I've always thought his music was garbage, so I think I would have just been like, okay. But no, he never made a song about me, never did any of that. But we never spoke again. I actually saw him at Warped Tour 2010, and it was either 2010 or 2011, but he was like at a booth there, and I walked by him, And like, we even looked at each other, but he just no reaction, like not like in avoiding me, but like he had no idea who I was. So maybe I was like too grown, I guess, at that point. So he didn't recognize me anymore. Like not even trying to throw shade, just genuinely. Maybe it was just not interesting anymore.
Did you ever meet any other band members of Blood on the Dance Floor?
Briefly. When Garrett was still in the band, I met him very, very briefly, just like at that one show. Then whenever we would see each other at the shows afterwards, we would kind of be like, hey, how are you? You know, but we never actually talked. But actually, interestingly enough, after everything started to come out and I was more accepting of what had happened to me, this is another thing where I wish I could remember if I actually spoke to him or if I spoke through somebody else, but I genuinely can't remember. I even tried to find the messages on Facebook and I can't. But I know that at least at some point, I was like, yo, that guy's really messed up. This is what happened to me. And I don't remember if my friend passed it on to him, but I know that I had like a reaction from him using my name at some point to be like, I'm sorry that happened to her. But sorry, that's messy.
Did you
blurry.
Did you ever talk to any other young women who have been targeted by him?
Not until recently. Actually, there was one girl local to me before I started piecing all the information together about him and, you know, how it wasn't okay. There was a girl local to me and I can't remember who she was. I wouldn't name her on stream anyways, but I can't even remember who she was. But I remember he actually knew her and was like pitting us against each other to the point where like he would text me certain things like, well, this girl said this, this, and this about you. And I'm like, I don't even know this girl.
So wait, Davi Vanity was pitting you against another girl.
Yeah. And she was like probably 15. Yeah, she was a little bit older than me, I remember. But because I remember my friend knew her and she was like, yeah, he's saying all these things about you to her. But then, of course, I would ask him and he'd be like, I would never do that. So.
And how many other Ashley Lillies do you think are out there who fell prey to Davi Vanity?
Not a single one.
No, how many other women are out there like you who fell prey to him?
God, dozens. I know that the Huffington Post article said 21 or something, but there's more. There's more that don't want to speak about it because even in the last 24 hours after my post, you know, started getting noticed on Twitter, I've had girls message me that are like, hey, I'm too scared to say anything, but here's my story. And then, you know, we talk a little bit and this is something I never thought I would be doing. I always thought that it would just kind of be something that like eventually one day I would talk about, but I would never like really like say it out loud. But after I, you know, made that post, a bunch of my friends from high school were like, hey, we remember this, like you're valid. So I started being more vocal about it. And the more vocal about it I became, the more people came to me. And
now we have some pictures of you and Davi Vanity together when you visited. Let's take a look if Ryan Jones in the studio can put one of those pictures up. Let's take a look. So this right here, Ashley, is the two of you. This is at your house?
This was in my room before we ever redid any of it. That's in my bathroom. He's actually on the phone in that picture. You can't tell, but in the other picture I provided, you can. But he's on the phone. And the reason we're laughing is because he's like tearing this girl up that he's on the phone with because she made him mad on MySpace or Twitter. But he's like saying really messed up things to her. And of course,
like what, for instance?
I can't remember to save my life the exact things, but basically just calling her an array of names and just saying very colorful insults to her, like how he does on Twitter. And, you know,
so he's at your house, allegedly to cut your hair.
Yeah.
It turns into an attempt at a sexual experience. And in the middle of all this, during a photo that you take, he's yelling at another young girl over some other incident.
That was the second time, actually. That wasn't the first night when my other friend was there. That was the second time after the movie when I was trying to pretend things were normal and, you know, we were inside and then he was talking to that girl. I don't know who she was or what their argument was, but I know that she was calling him out for something or another and he wasn't having it.
Did he rape you? Does this constitute sexual assault?
Yes. Yes.
No doubt in your mind?
No.
This wasn't a misunderstanding. Of course, at the time, you were 13, so there was no way legally you could give consent at the age of 13.
Yeah, of course. And at the time, you know, you don't know you're being groomed. You don't know when somebody's grooming you and conditioning you to think that things are okay that are not okay. So of course it was like back then I would be like, no. And in fact, the friends who know about it, the reason they know about it is because I told them, but I told myself that if I explained what happened to my friends, and if I say it in a way that makes it sound like I was into it, then I'll believe it. And then I won't have this image of my friend in my head anymore as anything negative, which is really sad.
Do you follow him at all today? Do you know what he's
up to? No, I have no idea. I know he lives in LA now, because if he ever stepped foot in Florida again, he would be done for.
Because of all the interaction he's had with other young women.
Yeah.
Why was it so important for you to reach out to tell your story?
Because it's been 10 years, and this should have came out a long time ago. And I feel like he's at his weakest right now, for lack of better terms, as far as, his social media status goes. He doesn't have the backup that he used to have. He doesn't have the army of teenagers who would, bow at his feet and, praise him and attack anybody. He doesn't have that anymore, because other girls before me were brave enough to say something. And right now, there's no time like the present. After the Onision stuff that you guys were doing came out, I knew that, like, if these people can talk about, old news and just come out with it and just be okay with it and be, like, confident enough to say these things, then I probably can too.
How much did the Me Too movement have to do with you garnering the courage to reach out to me, to this show?
Oh, plenty. I mean, that's something that I think about daily. That's something that I see daily, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be, given I'm new to Twitter, but, Instagram, Facebook, you always see articles that have, the hashtag Me Too movement. And I remember actually one of the first times recently that I started, kind of publicly talking about this, but not name dropping him, was because when, the Me Too articles started being more popular a year or two ago, and I had shared my story just anonymously, or protecting his identity for whatever reason.
What do you say to Davi Vanity tonight?
That it's over, and that you can't hide anymore because you don't have anything to hide behind, and that you've hurt too many people, and these people are angry and they want justice, and they're not going to stop until they get it.
And what should happen to Davi Vanity?
I think he should be in jail, and I think that he should seek serious counseling because he's sick. There's something terribly wrong with him. I don't wish anybody death, and I don't think that he can be helped, but I think that it might help in some slight way if he got some type of therapy, but behind bars. I don't think he should ever be able to walk on the streets as a free man ever again.
What do you hope comes out of this interview tonight?
I hope that people take the same inspiration that I did from, Sarah and Regina and Shiloh and everybody. And I hope that if they can see me doing this after 10 years, that whether it be with Davi or with anybody else, just, a random relationship that they have that's abusive in any way, I hope that it helps them recognize those red flags, and that it helps them make the decision to move on and come out with it. Because the longer you wait, the harder it is to, given, your truth, but it's hard to prove it to other people. And I think, you just got to do it as soon as you can.
Is there anything else you want people to know who are watching tonight about your experience with Davi Vanity?
That I think that it's very human for myself and others to still feel sad about it sometimes, and that it's okay if you feel upset about it, and if you remember it more vividly other times than others, that just to know that I'm valid and you're valid, and anybody else in this situation is valid. That's all that I ask anybody to remember.
And what do you say to other potential victims, survivors of Davi Vanity?
God, run the other direction. If you see him, just go the other direction. Or, if you're not sure and you still want to talk to this person, just keep tabs on everything, because somebody has to do it, because he's not completely stupid. He knows that everybody's on to him. That's why he blocks everybody constantly. So you have to keep tabs, because I wish that I had access to old messages and old pictures and everything. I really wish I did. So it's important that now, if there's any potential evidence for anybody, that you take it.
All right. Final thoughts, Ashley Lillie.
Just, don't be afraid to speak your truth, because even though people think that they can take it, they can't.
Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. We'll keep in touch. We'll keep investigating this involving Davi Vanity and Blood on the Dance Floor, as we will with the Onision investigation. Thanks very much, Ashley. You're very brave for coming forward. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, a couple of thoughts here. You know, it's interesting. I think that Ashley mentioned that she came forward based upon our reporting and our investigation into Onision. She did have a little trouble getting through, and a former producer, if you will, who worked on the show, intercepted Ashley's original email and kind of kept it from getting my way. So I want to be very clear, whether it's on the Davi Vanity story or whether it's on Onision or anything else you want to have me look into, have us investigate here. You know, you can contact us here at Have a Seat with Chris Hansen on our Facebook page, the same name, DM on Twitter or on Instagram, and we have all those links for you here. And I think you know how to use that. But make sure you either go through the DM on Twitter, as I said, or Instagram, or the Facebook page, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen, and make sure it's the legitimate one that we have, and we'll put that link up for you. So thanks for tuning in. Boy, what a story. And I've got to tell you that we tried to reach out to Davi Vanity to get comment. We were unable to reach him. We welcome his point of view on this. If he's listening tonight and wants to reach out, he can do so in any of the ways that we provided. The Onision investigation continues. I was in contact with some of the survivors today in that matter. They told me that they have spoken to investigators, and there will be more detailed interviews with investigators and the survivors' victims as the investigation proceeds. So it's moving along. A lot of people are asking what's taking so long. Well, it's not like on a television crime procedural where you get the answers, you get the criminal charges and the trial by the end of the hour. It takes time, but it is happening. I've been down this road before, and we're going to see it through, and we will keep reporting on all this and more until we get justice for the victims and survivors. So stay in touch. We're working on a number of things for next week. I've got something very promising that I think you're going to find very important. But thanks again for tuning in. We did kind of do two shows in one tonight. I hope you found it fascinating. I did. And we'll probably touch base a little later in the week about our upcoming programs and the continuation of our investigation. So thanks for having a seat with me tonight from New York City. If you're in an area where people are concerned or having issues with the coronavirus, I wish you good health, and I hope everybody takes the advice of all the health professionals out there and stay safe and stay healthy. So have a good rest of the week, and I will have a seat with you again very soon. Take care.